So, I want to do a fun little gag. Some people would be like, why the heck is this dude wearing a windbreaker jacket? And it's just so stupid because it makes all this noise by the mic. It's because it's a two-layered surprise. The first one, please don't fire me. Just wait 30 seconds, and then we can talk about it later. So the first one.
Well, I wouldn't fire you. I'd get the HR person to fire you, just to be clear.
Yes, I'd get a morning message next week. The first one is.
Oh, man.
It's like,
ouch.
Just a quick shout out to the boys 1 second. Sheldon Keefe. Listen, I'm wearing this, but it hurts wearing this right now under you. But this is a Canucks podcast. This isn't for my griefs. We'll leave that to everybody else in the East. So I'm going to kick it off the right way here.
Good. I was hoping that's what was going to happen.
The tarp's going to come off.
Okay, yeah, that I can live with.
Tarp's going to come off, and we're going to get this party going for the boys here. And this is my official application. This is my official application saying, you have a bandwagon now. Will you accept me in my bandwagon? Canucks fans, please.
Yes. Well, for those of you, let me introduce this. So this is episode 1 of the Canuckle Heads podcast. The subtitle is Heartbroken since 1970. And then if you really wanted to get into the minutia, it's Heartbroken since October 9th, 1970, which is the very first game that this team played. And for those of you who are listening on a podcast platform, whether it's Spotify or Apple or Amazon or what have you, what just happened was my co-host, Azzaya Khan here, thought it would be a good idea to take off his windbreaker, revealing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. The funny thing is, I had this weird feeling he might do that, so I'm not completely shocked. A little disappointed, but not shocked. And then he took that off to reveal a I Hate Simkin T-shirt, which I'm okay with that. That is another podcast that I do about the music industry. But I did want to introduce this as the official first episode of the Canuckle Heads podcast. I'm Jonathan Simkin. I'm the president of 604 Records, the independent record label based in Vancouver, Canada, home to such artists as Carly Rae Jepsen, Marianas Trench, Dallas Smith, JoJo Mason, Coleman Hell, Theory of a Dead Man. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting a million people. But and we also have our own podcast network, which this podcast will be appearing on. We also have Light Organ Records, which is our alternative label that has such great bands as Hotel Mirror and Fake Shark, who at the time I'm recording this are out on tour together right now on a very successful tour, which is great. And the Zolas and all sorts of great bands. We have Comedy Here Often, our comedy label, Juno award-winning comedy label, who've made albums by such great artists as Andrea Jin and Gavin Matz, and Intraset, which is our ambient label. So Azzaya is what is your official job description here?
The job description is podcast network director, a.k.a. your first toothless hire. I think. That's
true.
Yeah.
Although I could have sworn the first time I met you had teeth, but you told me you didn't. But I thought maybe you did. He has some teeth, just to be clear.
Just missing one. I got a window, dude.
He's got a hockey, but what a perfect sort of, if you're going to have a problem, some kind of a physical problem, that's kind of the most hockey physical problem you can have.
Yes.
Just ask Chris Tanev, who I saw interviewed last night, and I think he's down to the point where he's got one tooth. Like, somebody asked him, can you eat an apple? They actually asked him on the interview, and he was like, well, with the one tooth I can, which is good God. But this is a man who used to block shots with his face, so, I guess that's what happens. But let's talk a little bit about what this is going to be.
Yep.
And listen, we're still working it out ourselves, but I sort of had the original thought, and very recently, this isn't something we've been, working on for months and months and months. It just kind of struck me, and here I am. I'm going to now end up offending people, I'm sure, but that's kind of been my MO for my whole career. But, I felt like there really wasn't anything in Vancouver that I found super compelling for a certain type of hockey fan. And there's lots of stuff going on in Vancouver as far as that goes. I mean, there's Donnie and Dolly, who are classic. I mean, Donnie Taylor was the sports talk guy. Or is that what it was called? What was the... It's brutal that I'm forgetting. But I mean, for years, it was on cable television. And it was... Because sports talk was the radio one with Dan Russell. Oh, wow. I'm having here I am brain farting.
I would have been in
maybe
Toronto
Alexi
that time.
can look on Google. Can you look at Donnie Taylor television show? Like, it was I mean, it just goes to show you, A, how old I am now. I can't remember anything. And B, how long ago it was. Dawn Taylor. Anyway, she'll find it. But, you know, so those, Donnie and Dolly are both, like, just absolute classic icons in this city. Sakaris and Price. Also, maybe not quite at that level, and only in the sense that they haven't been around as long, but they've been around a while, and they're very well respected as well. And then there's a few other ones like
Halford and Broth, 6:50 in the morning.
Correct.
And they originally started off at TSN 1040, and you know, RIP 1040. It's all good. You guys are doing great, by the way. Jeff Patterson doing a great job on his podcast reporting. Halford and Broth had a great episode this morning. Ironically enough, with Rick Dollywall, the day of this recording. And I want to give a shout out to Rick because when I was in journalism school, Rick would actually answer my Twitter DMs so I can interview him for school projects, and I aced those. So thank you. And Alexi has the answer to your question about the TV show.
Thank you. God damn. Sports page, which was, talk about iconic. Then you know, that's before your time. You probably weren't even born, man. But he was so funny. He still is. So funny, and that was just like a go-to sports show, excuse me, every night. I mean, that would be, if you're a sports fan in this city, especially during hockey season, you know, you'd be going there every night to see him and saying things like brouhaha. He was just a funny guy, still is. And then there's some of these more like recent upstarts, like I think there's somebody doing something to do with the Steve Dangle podcast network. Although that one's weird because I can never tell. Yeah,
so like SDPN has this mass roster. Great job, by the way, Steve, going on your own, creating your own enterprise around the sports and hockey world and building from there. You know, they have all these different branches for each team, kind of like Daily Face-Off. I'm not too sure about their Canucks coverage. But there are other Vancouver local markets. Like you got Canuck Clay, you have Kyle Bavoine. That's, you know, ironically enough, I worked retail with him, but he's on Lockdown Sports Network now. And so when we came up with this podcast, I remember the one thing he said was, there's a hype behind this city finally. And, you know, we got lots of news to talk about. But before we get to that, we got to reference the subtitle here, Heartbroken since 1970. I want to know what Junior Presidente Simkin was doing, getting ready for that day, and what the first game was like and how that was against LA.
So here's me badly aging myself, because I don't know if there's anybody in my company who was even alive in 1970, let alone going to games. But, I have very distinct memories of it, and you know what it's like when you're remembering something that happened over 50 years ago. You're never quite sure how much of it is a direct memory versus how much of it is a memory of your memory. Like it's a funny thing, but there are things that stick out to me for sure. Number one, I will never forget who scored the first Vancouver Canucks goal. Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Boy, I hope I'm not wrong. Barry Wilkins, who was a defenseman, and I can't remember the score of that game, but I think it was 3-1. I think we lost 3-1. But the thrill of the first goal that the Canucks ever scored, you know, my dad bought tickets. I was not raised, you know, in a wealthy family or anything, so it was a big deal. Him getting those tickets was was a very, very big deal. And, you know, it's funny, like I went to a high school. I went to Eric Hamber High School, which is the high school, for those of you in Vancouver, right across the street from Van Dusen Gardens. And it was a funny school because it sort of encompassed a bunch of different neighborhoods in Vancouver, some of which were really wealthy, some of which were really not. And so, you know, you had what we used to call at the time the Main Street projects, which were these horrible housing units that were sort of on Main near 41st, but it also encompassed Shaughnessy, and it also encompassed Oak Ridge. And so I had a lot of friends in, my elementary and high schools who were very, very wealthy. And so I was lucky as a kid. I got to go to a lot of Canuck games, but it was always at the will of other people. And it's funny how that shit sticks with you throughout life, because, when I was in a position financially to be able to afford season's tickets, I dove in and I got them, and I've had my season's tickets for, 8 or 9 years. And it's funny how much that feeds into my childhood, because I remember being so jealous of my wealthy friends who they had tickets, they could go anytime they wanted, whereas for my family that just wasn't possible. The best we did was one year we got sort of a 6-game pack with the fucking Blazers, which was our WHA.
The WHA, Western Hockey Association.
Which, wasn't the worst thing.
It wasn't that bad. It scared the NHL a bit. I remember.
It did?
Yeah, it did.
Some of those teams ended up in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like the Oilers.
Ken Dryden's book on Scotty Bowman, named Scotty, he references the WHA in that book, and he says it was a competing rival at that time because hockey hadn't expanded majorly into major urban cities outside of Toronto and Montreal
exactly
yet.
But it was weird too, because it was a lot of guys who shouldn't have been playing hockey at that point. I think, and I could be wrong on this, I should have done my homework, but I think the captain of the Blazers was Johnny McKenzie, who had been a captain of the Bruins, I think, at one point. But he was so past his prime, man. He was past his expiry date at that point. And so whatever. But I mean, the point is, when I was able to afford tickets, and then was able to take my kids to games, boy, it's so, I mean, it's deep. My relationship to this team is deep. It cuts deep, deeper than it probably should, but it has been a part of my life for so long. I've been a fan for so long, and of course the heartbroken since reference, it's simply the fact that we haven't won a Stanley Cup. We've come close. We've come really close. And yeah, it's a bit of a heartbreak. I mean, as much as Leaf fans like to bitch about their team, at least they have a Stanley Cup in their past, or 2, or 3, or whatever it is. 3?
13.
13.
But
I'm way off.
It's original 6. You want to know a depressing fact about that, though?
What?
Because it was the original 6, you didn't have all 4 rounds like you have today. So Leafs fans just got past the first round last year. We've never technically been past the second round because there's been no need for it.
Yeah, the truth is, in the last 30 years, the Canucks have had more success in terms of
100%.
But we still don't have the cup, which is brutal. And I remember about 5 years ago, the Canucks had a season ticket member event where we got to ask questions to Jim Benning and Trevor Linden, who at that time was the head of hockey operations.
President of hockey operations.
And I said, hey, anybody have any questions? So I was with my kid, and I put up my hand. And I said, this is directed to Trevor. And yeah. I said, hey, Trevor, do you think we could get a Stanley Cup before I die? Which, got some laughs in the crowd. He just kind of laughed, snickered, and said, I'm not making that promise. No way, man. But yeah, I mean, it's, I have a real sort of, not love-hate, but heartbreak relationship with the team. But, I go to pretty much every single home game. And for me, that's the relief I have from my job. It's like a 2.5-hour vacation I get to take, 6 or 7 times a month. Nothing brings me pleasure more than being at one of those games with my kids, or with a good friend or my wife, or whatever. It's, to me, that's as tense as it can be to be at a game. It's for me, it brings nothing but relief and nothing but pleasure. I just love it. So that's kind of what that was a reference to, just, how long a history I personally have with this team. And, the fact that it's a kind of an emotional bond after all these years.
Yeah, it's definitely, when you said heartbroken, it emphasized the emotional investment. that you were just inherited in. The one part I relate to the most about that story is just seeing your friends being able to go to a hockey game at all times, and you're kind of just on the outside looming, just like, man, I want to get into that stadium one day. For me, that was 2009, Air Canada Center at the time. Jason Blake was the top scorer of the Toronto Maple Leafs at that time. He had 33-plus goals. He was the only scorer that year. It's so bad. Sorry, that's prior to 2009. It's going to be 2008. And
he's the dude who had cancer, right?
I don't know if he caught cancer, but I do know he really tanned up well in Anaheim in Florida.
He was really white, pasty dude.
Yeah, but
looked albino.
because he had like the light blonde hair, and it was really funny after a game. Because after that, it would essentially be my head, but like spiked up with super light blonde hair. And when he went to Anaheim, that's when his photos got more funny. But yeah, that I remember that was the one game I got to see in Toronto live. Never been there again. Then my family, only time I got to see a live Leafs game. Because every fan will say this: your tickets are overpriced. Well, why am I paying $300 essentially?
Yeah.
And then I can't even enjoy it. That's like half my paycheck, man. What are you doing? Let us go to games.
It's expensive. There's no doubt about it.
And so this is why I appreciate the Canucks fan base, though. And this is where I'm going to hear the Canucks out, is that every time there's some sort of news, some sort of press conference, anything, you guys never had the national spotlight on you until 2011.
Yep.
And then after 2011 died out, another rebuild starts happening in 2015. You're dying again to get back into that spotlight, as, you know, many attempts attempted by Benning, but my bad, dude. Don't want to make you upset if you see this for some reason. And now it just feels like, you know, this podcast was the right time to get back into it, because I think, to put it best, is what you said, is the city finally has something to celebrate again.
Yeah, and I feel like there's, you know, some of these more under the radar type, like, sort of podcasts or YouTube channels. You know, look, I don't begrudge anybody doing something like that, but I find a lot of them a little bit boring, and I don't want to call people out, or do I? Maybe I do. But
we'll save it for another day.
You know, I just feel like you know, it would be nice to have sort of a podcast with just some people who are fans, but also do other things. You know, so I'm sure over the course of this, there's going to be talk about the music business, because I'm so deeply ingrained into that as well, and other things as well. It's not going to be a hardcore stats-driven kind of, you know, podcast where we're talking about, you know. Yeah, so it'll be a little bit of a rotating cast. So we'll have some guests. We'll have some fun. It'll probably be some music people, some sports people. You know, we're just going to sort of see where it goes. And just for the record, because, boy, when you say something like, didn't he have cancer? He did have cancer, just so that I don't seem
okay.
Yeah. At the beginning of the 2007 season, Blake announced that he had been diagnosed with leukemia, a rare but highly treatable form of cancer. So I believe he's totally fine. Okay. But just to clarify that, I wouldn't be out there saying stuff that if I didn't actually have a reason to say that. So good for him for getting through that. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what this is. That's kind of what this is going to be. Plus, unlike all those other podcasts, I think we get to say fuck on this one. So that to me is important. We get to say shit.
I didn't get the memo.
We get to say piss. What else can we say? Some things we won't say.
You know, YouTube, get off.
We won't talk about NFTs, for example. We won't use that word. And you know, I wasn't thinking about this until Azzaya just brought this up. But you know, we got a Jew and a Muslim doing this together. Which, given the way the world is right now, listen, if we're doing our part to help sort of build those bridges too, well then.
I can't stop laughing. I did not get
Is that a bad thing to say?
No, it's perfect. It's so great. I'll tell you why this is great. And this is what emphasizes Canucks are the bros. We're the bros. Like, we can talk about anything, all right?
Okay.
But first off,
these days you get scared. You say anything and everybody gets offended.
I'm not scared of it. I'm out of journalism. Screw that.
And I'm old, care. So I just don't care anymore. I never really did care, but I really don't care now about.
If we do
anything.
put this on YouTube, get off our asses, all right? We're just trying to grow however we can. Leave us alone, please.
Well,
number one, number two. You want to go to the first time I met Zach Singer from A Light Organ Artist, the Zolas,
Zach Gray.
Oh, Zach Gray. Sorry, Zach Singer is a podcaster, I think. It was something else. Zach Gray.
Zach Gray is a singer, but he's not named singer.
Named singer.
Yes.
Zach Gray, singer of the Zolas. First time I met him, there's two things. You were there with him. It was at the Light Organ Records Christmas party. And it was two things. Number one, Zach had recently lost a tooth at the time.
That's right.
So I walked out of the door. Jonathan, can I try an impression? Jonathan, can I try an impression of you? I just want to make sure I'm not fired.
No.
Jonathan goes, oh, there's Azzaya. Hey, come here, meet Zach. This is the toothless employee I was talking about. He's missing one tooth as well.
I was fascinated by it.
And it was so funny.
That's not a bad imitation. It's funny
nice.
because you know who imitates me? I haven't heard it in years, but I think the best imitation I've ever heard of myself is Tyler Connolly from Theory of a Dead Man.
Oh.
And with him, he would do something with his face. It wasn't very flattering, but he would do something with his face, and my hands would always be, and it would always be like, dude, like, dude. I don't know why the voice, I mean, I don't know, does my voice go up like that?
No, it doesn't.
Your voice just went up a little bit when you was like, oh, like.
It's kind of like when you have epiphanies at the time. Where it's just like, oh, I didn't know that one. Just at the moment. But it's never something that's super noticeable like that. That's a good one from Tyler, though.
Oh, yeah. Tyler was brutal. He used to have an imitation of his A&R guy at Roadrunner, too, that was just... sorry, Ron, if you're listening. Sorry. But it was funny. Tyler's a very funny guy. So that's it. We are going to just do this, and... we're going to try and do these on a regular basis, and even if they're short bursts of commentary about things that are going on, and there's a lot going on with this team. So we hope you're going to enjoy it. If you have feedback, by all means, we'd like to hear it. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to watch these on YouTube, yes?
Yes.
Which means you'll be able to comment, so please do. And you'll be able to hear it on all the regular podcast platforms as well. Spotify, Apple, Amazon.
Spotify, you got it. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Samsung has their own podcast player.
Don't we have something on the Sirius?
Sirius.
Is it Pandora?
It's Pandora.
Pandora. So that's part of the Sirius sort of universe. Pandora. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I don't know.
Yeah, we got super sidetracked there by the Jew and the Muslim thing. Sorry.
Well, the world's been sidetracked by it too, apparently.
No, this is a sign. It's like it's the best thing ever. Because I remember the second sentence was, "Oh, look at that." Also, Azzaya, fun fact: Muslim hire, Jew and a Muslim. Who said we have problems? and I can never forget it. And that's funny. The moment when I came into this job and just like, I'm going to have fun working hard as fuck for this guy.
Well, it was, it is funny, right? Because like, and not to, boy, talk about getting off on a tangent, but like, I've said things before on Twitter that have gotten me in trouble. And the truth is, way back when I was first a lawyer, and I was a poverty lawyer, before I fell into the entertainment business. I was a refugee lawyer. That was one of the things I did, criminal law and refugee law. And, I rep some Palestinians to get into Canada who were being persecuted. It's that's just always sort of been part of my DNA, sort of helping underdogs. And I guess I've always viewed myself as one as well. And
you viewed your artists as underdogs. You invested your time in them.
I sure do, and that's why I sort of have a bit of a street fighter mentality about the whole thing. Because, whoa, that's not good. Wow, that's really not good. That's my phone, and it's not just my phone; it's my wife. So,
oh no!
Should I answer it? This could be funny, actually.
Okay.
I'm actually recording a podcast, so people will be hearing. No, it's okay. What is that? Oh, okay. Well, Okay, everybody. So my wife is going out drinking with her friends. Is that the short version that I'm telling the audience? Oh, apparently I shouldn't have mentioned the drinking part. She's going to socialize, so that's what that phone call is about.
Gathering. It's an intricate get together.
It's an intricate get together with friends, and I. Okay. On what? Okay, I think at this point I need to get back to the podcast. Thank you. Bye. There you go, folks. That's my life. My life. And it was on Do Not Disturb, so, and I told her I was doing a podcast, so. But as everybody in this building knows, you don't mess with Jen.
No.
You don't mess with Jennifer. But yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, so I mean, it's such a fucked up world right now. I can't.
The beginning of this podcast.
It's just funny that, you can say one thing on Twitter and be accused of being a racist, which somehow erases everything you've done for, 40 years of your life. From
Scary world,
the people you hire to the people you support to the people you empower. But it's like, yeah, but you made a joke on Twitter that was offensive. Oh, so all that gets erased, does it? Fuck you. Fuck everybody. I'm just so sick of this shit. But, wow.
Yeah. This is a sick start to a podcast, dude.
It's getting pretty off fucking topic. So.
No, we started off great. And the reason why it started off great is because now you know us. You got to see in depth inside your hosts. We're the bros. We're getting along. Everything's going well. Speaking of everything going well, there's still some hype around the Elias Lindholm trade. Getting onto the Canuck talk now.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do that.
We got some hype around the Elias Lindholm trade, and let me just say this. And I popped into your office yesterday. I said, with the Lotto line together, you're gonna lose center depth. Lotto line's playing great. Miller, Besser, Pettersson playing great offensively. Now you have a fortified second line center to keep the Lotto line intact. And it just looks, all in all, the depth of this team is insanely much better than I think any Canucks fan expected.
It's pretty wild. Like, I mean, obviously it's been a great year. We're the friggin' points leader at the All-Star break. I mean, my God, who would have predicted that at the beginning of the year? Nobody. And I mean nobody. Even a homer like me would not have predicted that. And, I guess it's funny because as excited as I've been this year and as exciting as it's been this year, there's still that, I guess, from all these years of us losing ultimately, it didn't feel real. Like a lot of the time this year, it hasn't felt real. And there was something about that trade that really made things very real for me in the sense of going, they think we have a chance to win the Stanley Cup or they wouldn't have done this.
Yep.
So my initial reaction when I saw the trade and let's call this post-Benning stress disorder syndrome.
That's a good one.
Was like, oh my God, we're mortgaging our future again. We're giving up a first. We're giving up a fourth. We're giving up a, But then I kind of looked at it a little more carefully, and I have to say, 48 hours later or whatever it is, I'm feeling much better about it. I feel like let's break it down. So let's forget about what's good about him and what's bad about him. And by that, I just mean his contract status. But let's look at what we gave up, first of all, right? So we give up a first round this year, like the next draft.
Yes.
Well, let's face it. I mean, because the team's playing so well, that's likely going. How many teams in the league again? 30?
33, 32?
32, I think.
32. It's 32.
Is that why it says 32 Thoughts Podcast?
Yeah.
Is that why they call it that?
That's.
Is that weird that I never knew that? Now I'm just figuring that out for the. I really didn't know that. But this could end up being pick number 32. At the very least, it'll probably be pick number, no higher than 25. Yeah. Now that's still something. You can do amazing things with picks in the second round. But it's not like we're giving up a top 10 pick, and it's a year that people are generally calling a very mediocre draft year. So we weren't going to be getting something amazing. It would be very unlikely anyway. So I'm okay with that, the first round pick. Yeah. I'm totally okay with, what was that kid's name, Jormo?
Yanni Jormo. He's a defenseman he's a Czech background. Look, I get it. You know, he wasn't the highlight of a lot of the talks on other Canucks outlets. But I'll say Yoni Yormo, a little questionable, but anytime you get a European defenseman, you see a bit of an offensive touch. So maybe you lost something out of that.
And he's big and can skate.
Yeah. And
but
so that's the thing with prospects. It's almost like, okay, these guys are valued because of their entry-level contract status, if they do sign, first of all. And even then, it's kind of a question of what if. I kind of understand why most Canucks fans would be upset about Hunter Berezkovits. I understand that. 69 points in the O so far. But the OHL, I'm telling you, it's always been high-octane offense, that league, and less defense. And there's a reason why Canada doesn't develop the best goalies compared to European goalies, like Sweden and Russia. It's just high-octane offense, specifically in the OHL. And so when I look at this trade again, yeah, I get it. You know, Hunter Berezkovits, could be one to bite you in the butt. But at the same time, when you look at this trade all in all, I agree with you in the sense that, you know what, it finally feels like there's a chance again. And we haven't felt that since 2012.
Yeah, I say his name again,
Hunter Berezkovits.
I'm not even going to try. I'll just call him Hunter. Yeah, that was the one part that hurt. Like, I looked at it and went, just because there's been a lot of talk about him. Having said that, I agree with you. That the OHL has traditionally not been the best predictor of NHL success. And Yormo, God bless him, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he was on a road to nowhere with this team. Like, that was not. So that's a nothing. And then what else? We gave up Kuzmenko, which... Boy, that's a tough one, too. Like, it's a weird one. I'm not going to say I was upset about it because it just has been off this year. And I think it's not even so much that he's been off. We have a coach who is very, very about his system. And listen, his system has worked. So he's got a right to have people buy in. And it seemed like for some reason Kuzmenko was just not able to do so. And I don't know why. I mean, I've been to every game but one this year at home. Boy, I wanted him. Everybody, because he's so likable. The guy's got a big smile when he scores. Like, it's infectious just how happy he is. He fucks around on the bench. You can see he's joking around with everybody.
Bananas and Diet Cokes.
Bananas and Diet Cokes. And he's a funny guy. Like, he's just... everybody, this fan base wanted it to work for him. Even as recently as a few weeks ago, I was kind of like, man, I can't remember which game it was, but he had a game where he was like second star and had a couple of assists, including like an insane behind the back assist. And actually, it wasn't even that long ago. It was maybe 2 weeks ago. And I was like, all right, maybe this is the beginning. Maybe now he's going to turn it around. But then the very next game, he was crappy again. And I shouldn't say crappy. He just... Because of the way the system is played, when he makes a mistake, it is glaring. And there were a lot of those, almost every single game. And then, you'd kind of see Talkett look up at the sky, and then you'd see that he was either getting benched or getting his time greatly reduced. And when he couldn't even really produce consistently on a power play, I think that was the end of the line. So I feel bad about that. But, we overpaid, I think, on that extension. And... he's only got 1 year left anyway on that contract. Yeah. So it hurts a bit that he's gone, but the Hunter thing hurts more in a weird way, just because Kuzmenko at this point represents unfulfilled potential, whereas when somebody's scoring off the charts in the OHL, it's easy to fantasize about like, oh man, this could be the next coming.
You're talking about a dude from Toronto. I know about fantasies, man.
Yeah, well, there you go. Now, the one thing I will say, if Hunter becomes a great player and we have to see him all the time on Calgary, that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt.
I think I agree with that point, that the Hunter B situation, well, not even situation, was just, the possibility of him turning out to be the high-octane, top-war defenseman that a lot of scouts have praised him to be. That's the one pain in the butt here. But on the Kuzmenko note, the people that are going to miss him the most is the Vancouver Canucks social media and marketing team. You guys utilize that big Russian, like that big, beautiful Russian smile to promo your merch, stuff like that. Find a new smile, dudes. It's over. And with that being said, though, best of luck to Andrei Kuzmenko because he really is a great locker room personality, and you see that in his interviews, and you see that when they spot him on the bench. And so, you're always worried about some of these things that, will this ruin chemistry whatsoever? Well, at this point, he was scratched.
Yeah.
So, and when you saw Pius Suter get into the top power play line, and he's doing really good for a guy who's supposed to be bottom six.
Yep.
And so now you add Elias Lindholm to that. It's a whole different story, different ball game.
The only stuff about Lindholm that I don't love, and it's got nothing to do with him as a player really, it's that he goes into UFA at the end of the year, which is like, so that is kind of the definition of a rental. So, let's see. I mean, they're saying the right things. Although I heard something interesting, and I can't remember if it was Halford or something on Sportsnet in the last couple of days, saying that, Alvin and Rutherford are like, honestly, if we don't re-sign him, we don't care that much. Like, it would be nice, but we don't even know what kind of a fit he's going to be here. Let's see how it is. The guy's 29 years old.
Yeah.
It's not like he's a spring chicken and, so, and we've got a few of these problems. We've got Zadorov as a dangling sort of uncertainty. We have, Petey. That one's a little bit different because it's RFA.
He's still an RFA at the end of this
So we
year.
have some control over that situation. That one's upsetting in a weird way because you sense that he doesn't want to be here, and I don't know if that's fair. Like, I don't know if that's just the paranoid Canuck fan base freaking out. He's always been a strange cat. He's always been different, and he's never been one to sort of talk at length with the media about how he feels or what his intentions are. In fact, the only thing that you really get the sense of with him is that he doesn't like the media particularly, or to rephrase that, he doesn't like being the focus of the media. But boy, that's the only thing that, I try to keep that stuff out of my brain and just enjoy the season that we're having.
That's what I want to emphasize.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, man.
Yeah.
Enjoy the wins. Don't overthink this trade. Don't overthink previous trades. The Zadorov trade was great. He fits into Tocchet's scheme. And I said at the beginning of this year, just as an onlooker at the Canucks, is that this is a statement season for not just the roster that was at season opener. It's a statement season for Rick Tocchet. You were heavily criticized heading into this job because of your past with Arizona, when reality is you didn't really have a lot of superstars.
What was
there.
he criticized for? Just not doing a good job?
Just the record was horrible. But you have to understand, Arizona didn't really have a deep roster at the time.
No.
I can't remember, other than this year, when Arizona would be considered to have a deep roster. And then he had that time in the coaching staff with the Penguins, and they made the playoffs. I believe he was an assistant coach at the time. But this was a statement year for him. And then you're heading into the All-Star break, as you mentioned, at the top team in the league. Enjoy the season. Like, I'm telling you, enjoy the season.
Tocchet should win to Jack Adams.
He has to.
Changes. What a turnaround it's
he has to. Unless Patrick Waugh pulls a miracle for the Islanders, which is so funny to watch him yell at those guys like in practice.
I think they've lost more than they've won. Since
Yeah,
he's been,
exactly. They won one game.
Well,
that's
the other thing I've heard negative on the Lindholm thing is that he's not really having a great year. But you know what? I think that's got a lot to do with the supporting cast. And it's one thing when you're playing with Johnny Gaudreau and Kadri when they're at their best. It's another thing when you're and Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
It's another thing when you're playing with Kadri and Huberdeau, who are definitely neither at their best right now. They've lost the door off. Calgary is a funny one because you can't really tell, are they like in a total rebuild? And I don't get that. Like, you sort of feel like they are, but then you sort of feel like maybe not. Like, getting rid of a 29-year-old center doesn't necessarily mean you're selling the farm. Zadorov almost was more surprising to me than Lindholm. How old's Zadorov?
Zadorov should
26,
be 26, 27, somewhere around there. But I will say this about when you look at Calgary as a seller, it looks like they're just selling what they can. Because you're not selling the contract to Huberdeau this year. You're not selling the contract of Nazem Kadri. Tree-Eveling locked in those guys for a long time. You're not selling the contract
I bet
of
they moved
Mackenzie
Tanev,
Weegar.
though, before the year's done.
Oh, there's still a lot of interest in Tanev. Like, shout out again to Rick Dollywall on Halpert and Broth this morning. Is they asked, like, was Tanev ever talked about of getting him back into the Canucks? And the answer was yes. Like, he was very much highly entailed in those talks, but it never really occurred. The other interesting fact that was revealed this morning, the day of this recording at least, was Elias Lindholm's agent is the same as Jacob Markstrom's.
Therefore, what do you?
And Jacob Markstrom loves Vancouver, always loved the city of Vancouver, and I think if the Canucks do re-sign him, it's going to be at quite the price tag, depending on how he plays and depending on how he does in the playoffs. But that could work in a favor for Vancouver.
Sorry, Lindholm, you're talking, not
Yeah.
Zadorov. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I just wouldn't want them. You know what? I just want to win a Stanley Cup this year.
That's all we got to
If they win a cup, I don't give a fuck what they do at that point. I can die a happy man. But I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting. And suddenly, this team is looking like it could very well challenge for everything. And who would have thought that? I mean, it's so interesting this year. Even the vibe in that building.
Going to a game.
It's so different this year.
I've only been to two. One of them was a preseason game in your new seats, which was great because the new scoreboard looks great there. The other one was the Rangers game, and I was up in 300. And even then,
we won that game.
No, that was an overtime loss.
Overtime loss,
yeah,
right?
In Vancouver.
Zibanejad?
But even I think Zibanejad scored that one.
God damn, he's like a Canuck killer.
Him and Chris. Well, I have a lot of feelings about Chris Kreider, but we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
But just the atmosphere going into that building and living in that building for those 2 hours, just watching the game was insane because it was unlike anything I've seen before for Vancouver in the longest time. And that was just the expectation to win. It wasn't just watching the team like the Boudreau season, and just kind of living with what you have.
Yeah.
The fans having expectations to win now.
And it's funny because, I mean, I went to the last two games before the break. The one was an overtime loss to St. Louis, and one was an overtime win on Columbus. And in both of those games, we fell far behind. And it's funny, like in years past, this team would have fallen apart. Like if they fell behind 2-0 in the first period or second or whatever it was against St. Louis, the game would have been over. They would have absolutely collapsed, and that would be that. Funny how now you almost expect them to come back. It really says something. I don't know what. I don't know if it's the coach, the players, the vibe, the energy, but wow, what a difference. I spent so many years assuming the worst and usually being correct in assuming the worst that it's almost been an adjustment expecting the best this year. And it really honestly took, we're how many games in? We're like over the halfway point. It honestly probably took until well into December when I finally went, geez, this team's pretty good.
Yep.
I just kept expecting the wheels to fall off, and they never did.
No. And it was a very refreshing thing to see on Canuck fan faces. So all I have to say in regards to you saw all this trade we don't know what's going to happen coming up to the trade deadline. We don't know if there's going to be some depth pieces added. We don't know if there's going to be any flipped pieces. We don't know what's going to happen. But I'll say this, the roster you guys have, Canucks fans, enjoy the season. Everybody, enjoy the season. Enjoy it. Let the playoffs come. Get your anxiety through, whatever, but just have fun. And that's my ending note all in all. Because this roster with Lindholm in it looks almost like a perfect roster now. Because he also built a great decor around Quinn Hughes. He's not just a piece. He has reliable defense. I get it. Carson Soucy's injured and whatnot. But as long as he's healthy for the playoffs, you just need defensemen that play defense.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of what's happened this year is that, for the last 4 or 5 years before this season, it seemed like there was always a couple of defensemen who were just called up from Abbotsford and really shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
Rathbone and
Guillaume Brisebois.
all these players who, and Chatfield, although I guess Chatfield now has a regular gig in Carolina. But maybe he just wasn't ready then. But it always felt like, oh God, like there's going to be at least 1 or 1.5 pairings tonight that are making me nervous as hell because they're just not really ready. And it was interesting because when management made all those moves this year in the off season, Soucy, Cole, who am I missing? There's more. It just sort of felt like, what are they doing? Like I didn't, and even some of the forwards, Suter, Bluger. It's like, okay, I know these players. Why are we getting a bunch of these kind of medium? But the thing is, there's a reason I'm not a GM because, what I think Alvin and Rutherford saw that maybe other people didn't was that we do have stars. We do have players who are incredible, but you still got to get them a supporting cast so that they don't have to do everything.
Yep.
And you sort of felt like last couple of years, that was what it was like. It was like, man, if those stars don't perform tonight, we're gonna get like destroyed again because we have players who shouldn't be there. So the supporting cast to me is a big part of the story this year. I think Roenick is a big part of the story this year. Took such a weight off of Quinn Hughes' shoulders to have a partner that he can play with pretty regularly, who is adept at getting the puck out of their zone. Because when you look at this team, that to me, just from how it looks, is the biggest difference. Is we're not endlessly stuck on our own zone anymore. The puck goes into our zone, and 80% of the time, it's a quick out.
And the other thing I wanted to emphasize is just as a pure hockey fan, you love it when grinders play well. You love it when your bottom six do their job. And that's why I'm a huge Dakota Joshua fan when it comes to Vancouver. That guy is tearing everybody up on the forecheck. And the depth forwards, as you mentioned, Teddy Bluger, Pia Suter, it's like why the fact that they fit into this system means that the Canucks probably have one of the best scouting systems right now. Like, pro scouting had always been a seemingly issue under Benning. I mean, look at Ekman Larson. Good for him in Florida. Fortunately, had to buy out the contract, whatever. But this season feels like the organization, specifically with pro scouting, prior to making all these signings and trades, looks like they know what they're doing and they're not just hitting the panic button and acquiring names no more. They're actually developing a team around these already existing key pieces.
Yeah, and putting in pieces that actually fill a need.
Yep.
Which Lindholm, I think, is a great example of that.
Zadorov was the other great example of that.
And I've loved Zadorov so far. Like I remember I called a buddy in Calgary when that trade happened and said, like, okay, give me the scoop. And he said, every single night you'll love him and hate him. And I said, oh, like in what sense? He said, well, for the most part, I loved him. This guy said, for the most part, I loved him. But boy, he's got a tendency, there'll be one shitty thing per game. Yeah. And you just got to hope it isn't the shitty thing that leads to a goal. And I sort of know what he means, although I have to say, last few games, I haven't really seen many of those. I think he's been solid. And it's funny, for a guy who's so big, he doesn't really... Because I know some people say, well, he's a big guy, but he's not a mean guy. And I think there's some truth to that. But boy, every so often he'll hit someone hard. And I don't think it's with malice, and I don't think there's any intent to hurt someone. It's just he is a massive human being. It's like being hit by a truck. And when he does it, you're just like, whoa.
You're
and in the playoffs is where I think we're really going to see his value.
That matters the most. Physicality matters in the playoffs. I know, like, the Q's got rid of hitting and whatever. The NHL, physicality matters. Zadorov is he's one of the big defensemen where you rarely see it now. Just pay attention to his skating. Pay attention to his feet for 5 minutes. Just for 5 minutes.
It's a very good skater.
And you'll see his feet never stop for a big guy. Because when he stalls, he knows he's not going to be able, his first step isn't going to be the first step of the wingers coming down on him. His feet are always moving, and his positional game is so much better. And to see him be comfortable jumping up on the rush sometimes. It's insane. Like, Zadorov is one of the most underrated Canucks right now, in my opinion, as far as new additions are concerned, dating back to free agent frenzy as well. And I'm just excited for the team all in all. And now that we get near to the end of the pod, we kind of talked about the excitement to this. I want to ask, what are your expectations after the All-Star games, after the All-Star break?
Canucks schedule is tough. They have a tough schedule. We've had not an easy schedule, but we've had an easier schedule than many teams. And I know I was looking at the schedule going, oh boy, like it's like this is a 5-game road trip, and it's a tough one. Like, so I don't know. I think we're about to see what this team's really made of, and I'm not 100% sure what to expect. I mean, again, there's still that hangover of the last 8-9 years, so there's always that little part in my brain going, it's about to fall apart. It's about to fall apart. But I don't know. Like I think this road trip right now is an important one. It'll be obviously the first one with Lindholm. It's going to be a chance for him to sort of work himself into the group, to see sort of what he's capable of. So I feel pretty good. Like, are we going to maintain the pace that we've had in terms of winning percentage and so forth? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we don't. I don't think we're going to shit the bed either. Like, I don't anticipate. Like, I think the worst case scenario is, we're just not winning as much. I'm not sure I care at this point. Like, as long as we're in the playoffs, then everything else is just a weird prelude that, like, I'm not one of those fans that thinks, sorry, I'm having a brain fart. What's the award for the most points?
Oh, the President's Trophy.
We've won the President's Trophy before. We won it the year we went to the finals. It's nice. It's a banner at the arena.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's not the big prize. And, I'm just stoked that, we're actually going to get playoff hockey this year, unless something absolutely disastrous happens. And I'm not looking forward to how much they charge you for the seats, but that's okay. I'm willing to put up with that. And so I'm feeling pretty good. Not over the top. I'm not like, oh, we're a shoo-in to win. No. A lot of things could go wrong. One key injury, and it's a whole different story. But I have to say, I'm feeling pretty good about everything. And I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing in the sense of, let's just see how everything goes when they go through that road trip. Let's just see how Tocchet plays with Lindholm in the system. And for the most of all, knock on wood, hopefully nothing super crap. I don't expect there to be a missed playoff scenario. I just can't imagine it. But at the end of the day, it's just a wait and see kind of thing. But I know one thing for sure, and that these games are going to be much more entertaining and much more enthralling with the addition of Lindholm, the performance of Zadorov, Pia Suter's growth throughout the season as well. Him taking over essentially what was supposed to be Kuzmenko's spot, and then performing at that pace as well, on the power play at least. It's been great to watch. And it's nice seeing the depth really contribute. So at the end of the day, I'm just going to enjoy the season. Again, enjoy the season.
I feel the same. And before we sign off for this, I want to give a quick shout out to Matt Lazell from the band The Matinee. He designed, or I guess the company he works with designed this swell Canucks jacket I'm wearing. So if you look at it, I'm looking at the wrong cameras. If you look at it, it just looks like a Canuck logo. But if you look a little closer, it's actually the 604 Records logo. So it's there, and in the back, there we go. Is that showing up in the camera?
Shout out producer Johnson.
All right. So big thank you to Matt Lazell for that. I'm not one to always wear kind of brightly colored clothing, but you gotta like this. I mean, it's got the 604 logo inside the Canuck logo.
Yeah.
Gotta like that. What else we got here? We have the Luongo bobblehead, which was given away at a recent game. I've also got Henrik and Daniel bobbleheads, which I'll bring down at some point. Where'd this come from?
So this was from the 2011 Cup run.
Really?
Yeah, they gave these out during the 2011 Cup run. But the thing is,
it a? Oh,
it's just a styrofoam head. Like,
but you wear it on your head.
yeah, so
You have to have
essentially,
a pretty small. My head's way too big for that.
so essentially, it's this.
Oh no, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, this is the definition of a Canuckle head right here.
Wow.
And they
yeah.
gave these out during 2011. I worked retail for them a bit while I was in college. Found one of these bad boys and picked it up because I thought it looked cool on my
Yeah, I
wall.
like it.
I just saw the mirror over there. It doesn't look so great
Well, it
right
doesn't
now.
look great, but I mean, it's a nice little memento.
But I did want to give a shout out. You know, every podcast has that one extra personality. You know, for Your Mom's House podcast, it wasn't a Dob. For Bad Friends, it's Fancy B. For us over here, the true Canuckle head. The Canucks are winning now. Alexa, you're going to games with us. All right, we're gonna go to games. The Canucks are winning. That's the honorary Canuckle head right here. Producer Johnson, dap it up. Good producer Johnson right there.
Have you ever gone to a game? Oh, you sat in my seats when? This year? Last year? Oh. Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, that's one nice thing about having tickets is, it's not just taking my kids, but, I love taking the employees or taking, artists on the label and, especially when there's real fans like I recently took Ian Castleman from Mariana's, who's a big fan. We had a blast. Matt Webb from Mariana's, we had a blast. I'm taking James Younger to the next home game, which is Detroit in a little bit of, it's about 10 days. So excited about that. So, yeah, there's really nothing like it. There's nothing like, doing a little business and watching the Canucks, and especially this year when, 9 times out of 10 you're leaving the place with a smile on your face. I will say, when they lose and I leave, I'm just pissed. Like, I usually come back to the office and work, and it puts me in a bad mood, which is ridiculous, right? Like, that's stupid. Not so bad this year, because even when they lose, you're like, okay, they're not going to win every single game. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
No, I just wanted to say, signing off from the first ever episodes of Canuckle Heads, subline Heartbroken since 1970.
Yep.
Thank you.
Since October 9th, 1970. And by the way, I was very young. I was in, how old would I have been? I would have been barely in elementary school. So, yes, I'm old, but I'm not.
Nah, you're not.
I'm not ridiculously old.
You make it sound like you're a senior citizen.
No,
dude.
not yet.
No, you're not.
Not yet. But, all right, everybody, thanks. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah.